Hey guys, so today we're going to take a look at some of the ways we can present our photos in a sort of print form portfolio. Now this is useful for everyone to know, but this is sort of like focusing a little bit on our Level 3 students. But we're going to work towards creating a basic little portfolio that we can kind of hand off to someone, maybe for instance in an interview or in some sort of form where it's like, well, this is a sort of and encapsulates the breadth of my skills, and here are some highlights of the various things I can do. So we're going to make a couple of pages that are going to be put into, like, say for instance, like a little magazine reader that you would just hand to someone, and then they could take a look at it, and they'd probably give it back to you, right? And so this is the one thing you print off, and then you kind of carry around with you, and you just show it off to whoever may be offering you a scholarship, or maybe offering you an internship, or offering you some sort of job. It's a useful thing to have, despite the fact that we have like everything web-based, and obviously web-based stuff might not be the best mode for this. If you're doing a lot of print stuff like signs or print ads or tags or packaging, things like that, then a printed portfolio is still a real effective tool to kind of differentiate yourself, especially if you can make it look kind of interesting. Let me preface this by saying that I went to this website, Behance.net, and I looked up several sort of different portfolio things for various various photographers, and kind of looked around at different ideas for how you might be able to lay things out. And I really do suggest that you do the same thing as well. Now, I'm going to give you some sort of tips, and I'm going to give you some kind of requirements for what we're going to put into our little layout here for our portfolio, and just various things. But ultimately, the overall design is going to be up to you as far as which photos you include and what sort of descriptions you put into it. Also, I went ahead and I went to dafont.com. There are several wonderful free font websites that are out there, but I went to Dafont. That's sort of my go-to site, and I found two fonts that I thought would be fun to include. Let's see if I can get my downloads here. They're in there. Well, at any rate, I chose a serif font for the descriptions, the body. I want to say I might have chosen Caviar Dreams, or I think I chose Champagne and Limousines. And then I chose for like my titling, I was going to have like a big sort of script font. I went ahead and found a script font here. I want to say, like, let's go. What was it? Well, it's gone now, but I think it's called Ant World or Ant something. I'll have to find it when I open it up. Just know, whenever you install a font, I think you're going to need my assistance, because I think you're going to need an administrator access to it. So if you want to install a font, just let me know. I'll give you a hand. I'm going to have to make sure it comes from a good site. Dafont's pretty trustworthy. And you'll need to close Photoshop out and then open it back up once you've installed it. So just keep that in mind. You can't install the font and expect to see it the moment that that it's there if you still have Photoshop open. So let's go ahead and open up Photoshop and create a new site. And we're going to keep this simple, just in terms of printing, because if you did want to print something off, you would still want it to be, you would want to, if you weren't going to go to some dedicated printer that dedicates itself to doing custom photo book prints, generally what you're going to be looking for is someone who can do something that, like, a real simple brochure magazine type binding. So in this case, we're going to have this be just a normal sort of letter size pages, but we're going to want to have like a 2-page spread. So if we go over here to print, we should look for this tabloid right here. If you look at tabloid, it's 11 by 17, which is essentially two 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper side by side. So the tabloid, essentially what that does is it gives us enough room to kind of place some things. But when we bind it, of course, we're missing some shall we say, areas by virtue of like the bleed, and by virtue of the gutter where we sort of have it printed here. So go ahead and create this. And I want to say I accidentally made it portrait orientation. We definitely want this to be landscape orientation. So if you caught this before you made this, that's fine. If not, it's okay. All we got to do is go to image and go to canvas, or go to image rotation, and just click 90 degrees. And so now we have this on its side here. Okay, to start off with, I want to make some borders or some margins here. So I'm going to get my move tool, V on the keyboard, and I want to make sure I can access my rulers. If you can't see your rulers, go to View and make sure Rulers is checked. And I'll move in quite a bit here, and I might even actually, before I do anything, I might go over here to my marquee tool, and I might draw a square, and I might right click on it and say transform selection here. And as far as width goes, I'm gonna, where it says 100%, I'm gonna say 0.25 in. That's gonna create a 1/4 inch tall or wide square, and I'll do the same thing for height, 0.25 inches, right? So now if I zoom in, I gotta press enter here. Oops. Let's try this again. Okay. Essentially what I want to do is I just want to try to create something that's going to give me a good margin here. So I'm trying to find 2.25 here. Here we go. 0.25. Again, I want this exact, so let's fill it in. We'll fill it in. We'll make a new layer. We'll fill it in. And then we'll just take our move tool here, Control D. And we'll just, oops, make sure it is, yep, 2.5, and its height is also 0.25, oops, inches. Okay, and then we'll make sure it's sort of, yep, apply, and we'll make sure it's sort of pressed up against this the edge there. And that way, what we can do is we can just drag down a margin on both sides that'll snap to this little square here. And I'll do that again for the bottom. Let me just sort of zoom out here. I'm using the tablet once again. You zoom out by sort of okay, it's a bit too small. By holding on the Alt key and scrolling up or down with the mouse wheel. Get closer. Let's drag this down. Here we go. Look at there eventually. All right, here we go. And we'll just pull this down here. And we'll pull this across the way here. This might take a second. So I think we're about the halfway point. So we could easily just drag our our rulers out there, our little guides out there, just to create a a semblance of margins. But I want to make this exact. So this is a good way of making it exact. So here we go. Pull this out and boom, we get that. And zoom out. So now we can kind of see we've got our margins set up. And, it's like one of those things here. I wish I could grab this more easily, but I guess, here we go. Whee! There's that. Never mind. Okay, so let's also create a little gutter area here. So once again, we want this to be right in the middle. So 8.5 is right in the middle there. And then we could also take this guy, this 1/4 inch margin here, and just kind of create like a 1/4 inch gutter, so we can avoid the little space there between the two pages. So let me just grab this guy one more time. Drag this out here. Okay, and then I'll stick one over here. And one right here. Okay, good. So that gives us a little bit of room to bind our page here. So I'll go ahead and get rid of that. Yeah, just kind of pop that up. Okay, so as far as this goes, I'm going to start off by kind of assuming that we already have like a sort of splash page that features are photography. Like this is like, hey, this is the coming up next is photography. You could think of it almost like a yearbook where you have like the opening page that says, hey, up ahead are all the student portraits, or up ahead are all the sports stuff. So we'll do that later on once you have a little more photos to kind of put in for an example. So in this case, we'll talk about our long exposure portfolio setup here. So I'm going to start off with a big title, and I'm going to see. So think about this. This is like 8.5 inches across here, and 8.5 inches across here. So we can so we can kind of think about like how we're going to have this laid out. We can have it laid across 2 pages if we want. That's certainly possible. But we got to think about the gutter here. We got to think about the area that's going to be stapled. So I'm going to get my new font that I just got here. It's called Ants Valley. That's what it's called. Like I said before, if you want to grab your own font, that's fantastic. And I'm going to just say long. Make a capital L here. Long exposure photography. This font that I've got here is interesting because it has a big space between each word, just by virtue of its. So I'll just make this big enough. What I'll do here is I'm actually going to make this about yay big, and then I'm just going to space it out some. So I'll just space this guy out a little bit. All right, so. There we go. That looks good. So you can see it runs right along that margin there. So the hope is that it's going to kind of line up with when you open it up, when you have it bound, it's going to be pretty. Now, obviously, if you wanted to place this, maybe not at the bottom or top, but maybe at the bottom. You know, if I put it down here instead, or maybe if you want to put it in the middle, that's fine too. Right. It depends on how you want to lay out your thing. I'm gonna actually put it at the bottom. And so by virtue of it being bigger than everything else, it'll be easy to see. So over here, first of all, let me go ahead and save this. I'm gonna save this into a certain file. I'm gonna make a new folder here, and I'm gonna call it Portfolio Spreads. And what we'll do is we'll name this long exposure portfolio. Okay, we'll just call it. We'll have this saved in a specific spot. And now for this one, we're gonna decide what our big pictures are. Now I don't have any of my long exposure photography examples handy. But what I am going to do is I'm going to do a couple of things. I'm gonna first off, I'm just going to draw a little rectangle here that's going to represent like a 5x7 photo here. So 5x7 or so. Because 5x7 is about the same ratio as everything else. And I'll just sort of fill this in with gray. Obviously, you can't create shapes here. In fact, I'll just do that. I'll just go over in my little rectangle tool. Cancel. And I'll just make a new layer, obviously, and then I'll just sort of, instead of pixels, I'll make a shape. So, once again, all right, so width, let's make this 5 inches. Width is going to be 7 inches, 7 inches. And then height's going to be 5 inches. So now, obviously, in this case, what you'd be doing is you'd be dropping in your photo. So this is an approximation of the general thing, but as far as the fill goes, I'll make the fill kind of like a gray color. And the stroke, I'll take the stroke off. And, okay, so now, with that done, I'm going just to kind of like hold down Shift and sort of expand it until it takes up this entire half of the page. And then what we'll do is this. I'm going to get my text tool here, and I'm going to create a little text box. I'm going to have it kind of a square text box, like so. And I'll use my new font, which was called. What was it called? Let's go to my downloads here. Sometimes you forget the name. It's called Champagne Limousines. Okay, so I'll find my Champagne Limousines font. So Champagne Limousines. I'll do regular. and it'll be 36 font at this point, so I'll say long exposure. This is going to be too big. I'll make it maybe smaller, maybe like 18 font or so. And I'll just say long exposure photography is super fun to do. It can create some amazing effects and is totally rad. Okay, so I mean, obviously this is not going to win me any awards, but my point here is that we're going to create a little block of text that's going to, again, hopefully, show whoever is looking at this that you've got something to say about what you're doing. It's kind of an unrelated story, but somewhat related. I remember being in high school and being told that if I wanted to, like, get any, like, sort of recognition in certain because I played in the band. Said you should try out for an orchestra. Try out to play the tuba for the local orchestra. Go try out for it. And because even though I wouldn't make it, I would still be, oh, hey, well, there's a local tuba player here, because it was in Augusta. They had a little symphony there. Anyways, I play my little song, and, it's fine. And the guy says, so what do you think about this composer? And this composer was some obscure Italian guy who I had no idea what it was about. And he just wanted to know what I thought about this thing. So it was, sometimes you get moments where it's like, oh, you can do this. What do you think about this technique? It's like, oh, well, this technique is kind of fun because X, Y, and Z, right? So if you have something to say in specific about long exposure photography, that's fantastic. I would keep this kind of small. I would keep this little area here kind of small, and I would give myself some room over here to kind of describe some things about this. So let's say, for instance, before we do anything else, let me get a window. Let me find my paragraph window here, and let's look here. Nope. This window character paragraph. Here we go. Paragraph. I want to make sure this is going to be justified, and you can hyphenate it as well. And I'll just fill this up a little bit here. So it's totally red. My absolute favorite part with using the lights. Okay, and then I'm going to pause here to create, and then I'm going to pause here. I'm going to take my little move tool. I'm going to Alt and drag it, hold on Shift, and create a little, so like 1/4 of an inch here between these two. Nice grouping and stuff. So here again, this is like what you would do if you had something interesting to say. And again, this is okay, so kind of optional here. But I'm going to just say, like, let's create some space here to explain what you, the photographer, thinks about this this sort of thing. And I'll just say long exposure photography is super fun to create interesting and dynamic movements. Interesting and expressive designs in the air. While compositing with a paint program like Photoshop. I'm rambling at this point. It's also cool to do. Cool. It's also, I wouldn't use cool in a professional photography portfolio. I'm just saying, this is one of those things. But it's also cool to create these effects in camera. Oh, okay. Easy. It's fun. Too crazy. Sorry. Okay, so let's take a look at what we got here. I might just pull this up a little bit more to the side, and I might try to like take both of these and sort of center them between these two. Here we go. You can kind of see this. It's going to give us a little bit of a. What is this first arrow here? Oh, I see. It's the center. Okay, that's about right. And then over here, I might, for instance, take this, and I'm going to use the same font, but I'm going to say have it be like I'm going to have it be italic here. So I'll be like italic, and I'll say 1/100. No, italic. Right? I'll say 1/100th of a second, or in this case, I'll say like 20-second exposure, f22, ISO 100, and then I'll say whatever 18 millimeters. Okay, and so what you would want to put here would be your sort of capstone, your keystone thing. So whichever one you think would best represent like your favorite photo that you put here is what you would put on here, right? And then you could even maybe put down here. I'm just going to alt drag this guy off to the side here, and down here maybe you could put a let's see if we can't get this to be about the same size as this guy. There we go. Put this guy right here. Maybe you can sort of drag it out a little bit. All right. So like maybe you could like put a little photo, like a little tiny photo here, right? And then down here you could do the same thing. Because I'll drag this down. Oh goodness me! I'm gonna go ahead and save because apply. I'll just have that there, so you can kind of make sure that this is so we can just go now. So we have 1, 2, and so we've got a bajillion photos that we've been using here. So let's just we'll just create like maybe like a few. Oops, let me just get both of these things. I'll just hold on Shift and just grab this. And I noticed that there was a new thing. The new thing now is to have them like right up against the margin. So even though you have some room to kind of maneuver here, what are we doing? Let's oh hello. Okay. All right. I'm just gonna alt drag select all these guys, and I'll just put them on the other side here. Now in this case, I want to give myself, say for instance, a little bit of room between these two pictures here. So I'm gonna do this number here. I'm gonna get my little guide and sort of try to get right here in the center. So I think if this is 8.5 and this is 17, between the two of them, we're looking for what? I guess I'm not sure. This looks about right. Center. Yeah. Okay. How about this? Okay, and I'll just shrink both of these down just a little bit. And then move this off to the side. Hello. Great. Okay, cool. So I just want to have a little bit of space between these two. I'm just going to get rid of that. And just have them be like the same size. And so what we'll do is we'll have, so in this case, I've got this one. This is what? How big is this? Window shape. Do I get path? You just click on this and say, oh, it's almost 4, 3.7 by 2.5. So yeah, but the same. 3.7. Okay, so once again, I'm just going to take these guys here and I'll put this up against the margin here. I'll just put this up against the margin as well. Put this up against the margin as well. And then what we can do is we can then just sort of like alt drag and then alt drag these two right here. This might be a bit too big. You may want to like, if anything, we could just drag these up a little bit. There we go. So this is just a little bit different from your normal, from the normal photo spreads that we've been doing, which has just been kind of like, you know, putting the photos out there and just sort of like naming them. In this case, what we're trying to do is we're trying to we're both trying to showcase the photos, and we're also trying to showcase ourselves, which is a big part of any kind of like, you know, especially nowadays with like this sort of gig economy we've got going on here. I don't want to like paint a grim picture, but like there's so much stuff that's kind of happening when it comes to jobs, and people are so, like, you know, curious, like what's you know, is job security ever going to, you know, come? It's like, well, you know, job security might come back, but mostly what it's going to be is people who are like, you know, everyone's going to be trying to like market themselves and try to get that hustle. So we just got to make sure we're presenting a good face. So once again, this is all in service of a portfolio that we can send to someone. These aren't even lined up, are they? I'm trying to line these up. That is offering us something, be it a scholarship, be it an internship or a job of some kind. We're trying to get their attention and show them that we have a certain set of skills and we have a certain sort of attitude about us that's going to be beneficial to them. So essentially what I want you to do here, this is the long and short of this. Take your photos, sort through them. You know, I would divide them up into like different folders that you can kind of like sort through pretty easily. And I want you to kind of think of one in particular that you like the most, and then find, I guess, 7 more, right? So we got 6 over here. We've got one tiny one. Even if, for instance, what you could even do is you could even take this big photo here, and then like you have that big, and then just maybe sort of like zoom in on a specific area, maybe a specific like point of it that you like. This little text here, it's not super important to me what you put. I would just like you to put some like text there if you want to go Google the lorem ipsum, unless you're in level 3. If you are in level 3, then you need to come up with something that you can kind of like put on there to put, because what I think my plan is, eventually what we'll do is we'll print these guys out for our level 3 people, and we'll see if we can't send you off with something that you can kind of show to potential colleges and stuff. All right. So once again, this is the aim for this is to be something printed. So I've placed these guys kind of hanging out here. I found these 2 new fonts. You can find whatever font you want. This is one of those things where whatever font you choose, if we want to be consistent about things, we can sort of like theme our fonts for our various sections. But essentially, this is just a real basic layout that's supposed to like bring attention to various things. We've got emphasis, and we've got grouping over here. So, all right. So this is just the template. Obviously, these little gray spots would have photos in them. Cannot wait to see you guys produce. See you in class.